Hello and welcome to We Never Met, the podcast where I have interesting strangers on every single week. Today, if you want to introduce yourself, from Atlanta, but actually from Milwaukee.
Yes, Steven Spurlock here, in Atlanta, living in Milwaukee.
How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty well. You doing all right, Sam?
Yeah, I mean, Atlanta is a big hub for filmmaking and stuff too. So, have you been down there before this trip?
I have flown through here quite a bit. I haven't really explored it too deeply, honestly, but I do have some friends here working in film.
Going back, did you grow up in Milwaukee or in the Milwaukee area?
No, not at all, actually. So I was born in Texas, did most of my growing in Louisiana, actually. Then I was in Florida for a little bit, and then out in Los Angeles, and then moved to the Midwest for Trek Bicycle. And Wow. I've been out there for 7 years now. Kind of trips me out.
Yeah, that's so wild, right? So you've been to a lot of different places. What made you, because now you do your own thing and you can sort of, I guess, go where you'd like, I guess, if you wanted to. What made you want to stick in Wisconsin, in Milwaukee?
I think for me, it's just life's just a constant exploration. I just have a lot of curiosity, and you get one timeline and I want to fill it with as much as I can, as many chapters. And what I've seen and experienced out of all the cities I've been to, Milwaukee's a pretty fucking special place. Mm-hmm. And it's overlooked by many. And if you can endure the winter or find some sort of sports and stay active and keep your head safe, it's a pretty magical place, Yeah,
because when you were originally going to go there for Trek, did you have any experience with Wisconsin or Milwaukee, did you have any preconceived notions of what it would be like?
That's a really great question. Oddly enough, when I was in elementary school, my best friend throughout that whole period was from Madison, Wisconsin. And in my child mind, having, never left more than 2 states outside of Louisiana, I envisioned a very cold environment. I didn't see summer there in my head. I just remember knowing it's super cold. And that's all I really knew of it. And then long story short, it's later on in life, I'm Trek Bikes is from there. And so goes the journey.
It is very cold. So you're spot on with that assessment, Mm-hmm. Were you doing a lot of film work as a kid? Were you a kid that had a camera all the time and was messing around and shooting things as a kid?
Yes and no. I think for me, just creativity was always a thing. From my beginning days, just Legos. I would just disappear in my room. I had the whole corner of my room just built out with all these things, would follow the instructions once, learn from it, and then just create my own stuff, constantly creating. And then from my parents too, my dad was an architecture project manager in the construction realm. So I got a lot of experience just seeing how things were constructed and built, walking sites with him. And then my mom, up until I was born, did advertising and illustration. And then through my younger years, she did painting. Music was in the house quite a bit. So just a lot of facets of seeing how things are ingested, audio, visual, hands-on construction, all that kind of stuff. Then I guess my grandfather always had analog cameras and I got some exposure through that. There's always a camera in the house, but never a video camera. What I remember is a Sony CyberShot, that shot video. And that was my first experience to being able to shoot my own video. And that was probably at the age of 16. I remember a buddy had a car, got his first car, and we shot a car sequence with it. And I didn't know what coverage was, covering things from multiple angles. I just knew what I had seen in the movies, how it is supposed to look and feel.
Sure.
And I remember a cul-de-sac that we had, and I was oh yeah, I'm gonna shoot it from over here, and cut together just a little car sequence. That was kind of the first video that I remember cutting. Outside of video, honestly, music has always been my biggest passion, and my creativity has come out of music. And, as soon as I could pirate software at the age of 13, 14, I was in Adobe Audition. Actually, it was called Cool Edit Pro back then. So I did a lot of recording. And then aside from that, playing in bands and having friends in bands, local show posters. So I, pirated the Adobe Photoshop and stuff. And show posters. So I had that sort of thing kind of going on before transitioning fully over to video.
So do you still play music? Do you play instruments? Are you in bands and stuff?
No bands, just kind of a closet musician. I have more demos than I can count. And this past December, I went out to SoCal for the month, and I'm trying to do like a full length record. I'm not going to say try, I'm doing it.
Sure.
The last time I did a full length record with a band was like a decade ago. So I'm like, if I can do one of these every decade of my life, that would be a cool little chapter to have.
Yeah, that's a cool thing to look back on. Definitely. I see a guitar back there. Is your brother a musician as well?
Yeah, he is. He dabbles. You
Okay.
know. Actually, I brought my pedal board just to kind of show him up,
So I'm interested with that, with music. Like what type of music are you playing? Like what kind of music are you writing? Because I had no idea.
I think what comes out of me naturally is just kind of like jazziness with ambient droney stuff, like noise and ambience, but also like little jazz licks all over it.
Because did you take guitar lessons and stuff growing up, or is this just something that you really like to do?
Yeah, no, actually self-taught, learned on tabs, kind of learn songs, learn how that works, and then kind of just take that and create my own interpretation. So it's all playing off a feel. And I think, there was like an acoustic guitar in the attic when we were like kids. It was my mom's in college, and she never really got great at it. But it was my brother, he's like 4 years older than me, that struck his interest. And he was in high school, I guess, early high school, maybe late middle school. And once that came down, new strings were on it. I watched him. I was like, oh, snap, that's cool. And then the spark was hit with me, and I picked it up. And I think I went a little bit deeper than him. He got into the piloting thing and went the own direction. But music, it's just maintained like always the steady beam in my life. Like everything creative kind of always comes back to me musically. Like musically, I don't know, it just gives me an immense amount of feeling, and it's a great escape too, just to disappear into a space, an audio world.
No, yeah, for sure. I tried to learn guitar when I was growing up, and I just got so frustrated and just didn't do it anymore. It's a tough thing to learn. I was a trumpet player in band and things like in jazz band and stuff. But yeah, guitar for some reason it was just like it was so difficult. I don't know why in my head compared to like a trumpet or something like that.
Yeah, well, lessons and tutorials have gotten a lot better than they were when we were younger. So,
that's true.
If you want to dive back into it, I think it's only getting easier as far as different ways to learn.
Because I mean, my grandpa was a guitar player. He like wrote his own music and stuff. So I have like a really nice Fender Telecaster and a super nice acoustic guitar too. But yeah, I just never have learned how to play, but I have these like golden great instruments to learn
those
on.
are awesome, man. I play a Telecaster, one of my favorite instruments. Yeah, you should jump back into it. Try an app or something, or some different approach maybe.
I think now, just knowing how I am, I would definitely be able to learn quicker. But yeah, I think because I took lessons in like middle school, and it just wasn't a great time, I don't think, to learn an instrument for me. But
sure.
But yeah,
we all learn so differently too, right?
Yeah.
And an instructor's probably teaching you how they were taught. So
yeah,
there's been quite an evolution in the way things are ingested. So for me, what helped my style of learning is just like learning tabs and then being like, oh, these are the shapes, and then just trying to piece it together. Go to the workshop and just.
Yeah, because it always seemed like when you took like lessons from a teacher, they were teaching you music that they liked. Like I remember it was a lot of like AC/DC and stuff, and like I'm okay with AC/DC, but like I don't really listen to that sort of stuff. So I was just like I'm like, I don't even care. I don't want to play this anyways. Yeah. If you were more into music, when did filmmaking and like photography sort of take a different direction for you growing up? Because you've very much immersed yourself in that community and in that artistic field. Was there like a specific project or event or something that you saw that made you want to go further into that?
I think it was just a chain of events.
Yeah.
So I guess the cleanest line was, I had done this like full length record with my band in Louisiana, and throughout it all, it's like, you're putting a lot of dependence on, other band members, and if one person has a change of events or wants to do this or go this way, it's like, oh, now we got to figure it out. And for me, like that was always super difficult. I don't half-ass anything. And when I'm committed and, you have a hole in the ship now and you're like trying to figure out how to bandage it up to play the next show or do the next event. It's just very difficult. So around that time, Louisiana was passing or had passed like a tax incentive. So there was like Hollywood South going on where I grew up. So you had a lot of film studios popping up and production houses they were shooting and whatnot. And I guess through a short sequence of events, like my mom had bumped into somebody, and then I was trying to get on set as a PA, and then kind of a big circle happened, and I met some people, and they were telling me about this school in Florida. It was a very small school, about like 120 kids at a time, called the Digital Animation and Visual Effects School. It was in the backlots of Florida, or Orlando Studios in Florida. Did I say Orlando Studios? Universal Studios in Orlando, Florida. And yeah, just like in a matter of maybe like 3 months, man, I was just on my way. And that school was like very intensive program, and teaches you like everything from 3D rendering, lighting, compositing, storytelling, all the good stuff. And I guess previously building up to that, I always had an interest and had been like designing stuff and working for design shops in Louisiana. The evolution of that was like wanting to see designs move in the motion graphics realm. Okay, kind of can piece all this stuff together. Graphics, motion graphics, compositing, animation. And there I was, dropped into Florida.
From graduating from that program, did you immediately move out to Los Angeles to try to like work in the film industry?
Yeah, totally. That was another thing with the school. It had a really good placement rating. So like you did well. And I don't know, I had my mixed thoughts about schooling and stuff, but this school was cool. It was like kind of more of a trade school. Like you're actually learning what you would be doing in the studios.
Right.
And I never did well in school before. I'll just say that, like actually really terrible. It was really hard for me to connect some stuff and how in the real world. In the school, I did really well. And in essence, just like landed a job with Deluxe Digital Studios out in LA and hired before we moved out there. And then just caravanned with my buddy and had a roommate and just jumped into it. The first projects was like working on Disney films.
Yeah, that had to be like, I mean, I can sort of put myself back in that place of being like a 21-year-old or something and working on like these massive projects. Because you've worked on projects like the when they re-released the Titanic, the Avengers. I mean, these are like big deal movies. Was that like right away when you got out there, you were doing stuff like that?
Yeah, the first project was Disney's like John Carter of Mars. Yeah, shortly after that, it was, I think, the Vampire Hunter, the Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter. And then immediately after that, it was Marvel. All of those are done under the same house, Stereo D. Yeah, it was cool, man. It's kind of like I was warmed up to it going to the school, realizing that could be the effect of going to the school if I did well. And then, once I was there, it was awesome. Yeah. Walking into the Target after wrapping your like 12, 14-hour shift, and you see like all this promotional material for the upcoming Avengers, and you're like, yeah, I just spent my whole day working on this film, promotion. You see billboards in LA and whatnot. So it's super cool.
So what made you lean towards like the VFX stuff? Because you sort of said there was a bunch of things in that school that they were teaching you. But why'd you go that route specifically? Because that is, I feel like a very intense way to go. Like it's very difficult to do that sort of work. So what made you lean towards doing that stuff?
That's a good question, man. I don't think I've ever asked myself that question. I don't know. I guess, when I was in the school, I was like, oh, that'd be cool to work in Pixar. But I don't know. I guess like it felt a little bit out of my world. I wasn't like a big like anime kid or anything like that. I've been much more of an outdoors kid my whole life. Maybe more of like the practical sense of like using live action plates and implementing in CG, computer generated stuff, was more interesting to me than a complete CG world. So maybe that was kind of the thing.
Just so other people have an idea of what's going on when you do that sort of stuff, like could you give like a brief, like let's say on example for like the Avengers, what were you doing as a compositor in like the VFX realm in that movie, just so people have an understanding of that?
Yeah, for sure. So basically it's all kind of broken down by shots, shots that need CG or VFX and shots that don't. And the shots that do go through a big pipeline, and of course they're all grouped, and then like there's certain teams that take on certain things. And with that too, I mean, you can imagine there's just an army of people and different studios doing different things. Some are doing just volumetrics, smoke effects. Some people are doing like just keying out green screen. They're sending footage overseas to get rotoscoped, just immense amount of stuff, right? And in Avengers, yes, stereoscopic compositing is essentially like taking these like shapes and displacing them in 3D space using like black to white color values, luminance values. Like stuff that's white is like more out in your face, and stuff that's darker, more in the shadows, like pushed back. I don't know if that illustrates with words, but in essence, we would be doing like gradient maps and whatnot, putting things in 3D space. Sometimes we were compositing in other things like, you know, it could be like a lens glint or, you know, spark effects. Yeah, that's kind of that world. I mean, it goes on and on with the complexities. And
because I mean, you see films like that, and the immense amount of work, and you sort of forget that there's probably hundreds of people working on that sort of stuff and doing little different things. And but that's super cool. So when you were doing all that stuff, was there a reason that you wanted to sort of get out of that realm in that area and go to Trek? Like, was it a thing of like burnt out? I mean, you talked about working 12-hour days. I feel like that would get old after a while and tiring. So what led you up to that decision to come and start looking for other opportunities?
Yeah, crazy, man. Yeah, well, while we were talking about Avengers, just a funny story. Yeah, the longest shift I ever worked, I don't know if it's even legal, honestly, but we did there was a team of 3 of us that did a 27-hour shift.
What?
On the longest shot in the movie. It was like the final shot.
So you didn't even go home for 27 hours?
No, we didn't. We just took like naps.
Wow.
Yeah. And the script was so big that the machines kept on breaking. So that was another part of it. So we had to like deconstruct segments of the script so that we could render out certain elements to then recomposite those elements.
Wow.
Yeah. Pretty gnarly.
That's pretty bad. Yeah.
Yeah. But great experiences, you know, like no matter how shitty shit gets, I think I can always find the bright light in it. And it's just still a good experience for me.
Yeah.
But I guess just to get back to your questions, like, you know, I did the music thing, I did the design thing, used to do the screen printing thing, and then going into the visual side of things with video and VFX, you know, I felt like I'm kind of like filling up this wheel of like media, right? Of all the things. And me being much more of an outdoors kid at heart, I'm thinking like, LA's cool, but I spent a lot of time inside on this post-production stuff. You know, I'm thinking like, how do I take this skill set and plug it into the outdoor industry? And looking at the outdoor industry at the time, you know what, this is over a decade ago, I guess it feels like now. I don't know. But looking at it back then, it's like, wow, there's a lot of opportunity to take some of this, you know, these skills and apply it to the outdoor industry. So that's kind of what happened. I just kind of started looking around in that world, and I've always loved bicycles, and everything just kind of fit. Yeah.
I mean, so when you were growing up, you started talking about outdoors a lot. Were you like a kid that would go camping and stuff? Like, was your family like a camping family, and like they would go to different places?
Yeah, for sure. Definitely, my brother was always like the one that kind of pulled me out into the wild. You know, he's one that would be like, you know, filleting a fish and throwing the guts on me, that kind of stuff, you know, trying to toughen me up, I guess. But yeah, we did a lot of camping, always exploring. Yeah, always exploring, definitely out in the sun. Like mom always like, our parents would like garden and stuff, you know.
Yeah.
Always had to cut the grass, you know, like I guess a lot of my jobs were outdoors. Like I had a lawn service when I was like probably 13, 14, and did that until I could get like a worker's permit at like 15. Then I was working at a car wash. And I did that for several years. And then following that, like, I guess post high school, I went straight to the postal service. And
that's more outdoor stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And that was probably one of the coolest jobs I've had, you know, delivering mail for like 2 years, driving out in a little truck. But no, yeah, I guess just to wrap that up, it's like, yeah, the outdoors, like I did the post office thing, like actually right after high school. And that was just means of like, I don't know, I didn't have my confidence in like going straight to school. I didn't understand like what I really wanted to do. And I kind of felt like, at the time, I was like, I need to make good money to be on my own and be able to buy like music gear and recording gear to basically like record my band's album. And in my head, I was falling off that, like, or following the Death Cab for Cutie, like Chris Walla, you know, like he would record their own records, the record company would pay him. I was like, that's what I'm going to do. And that's kind of my entrepreneurial mindset. Like, I'm going to record this album, try to get us like signed, and then I'll just be a sound engineer. Like that was my plan.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you work very hard to like get to that point, or did you stop at a certain point and be like, no, I'm not, I'm done doing this?
With the post office?
No, with like trying to go down that route of like getting signed and like buying
Yeah.
a bunch of equipment.
It was in essence when the band kind of ended, and I was like,
Mm,
okay, like I'm just gonna go to this school. It seemed like a lot more fun, you know. I'm like, okay, I'm leaving the state. I think that might have been it too. I'm like, okay, I'm moving to Florida. Like that's the appeal, and I kind of feel pretty confident that I'm always gonna land on my feet. I'll always
mhm.
be resourceful. Like I'll always figure it out. And at that time, that was just kind of like, dope. I got this. I'm gonna do that.
You think you're going to be in Milwaukee for the long haul?
I asked myself that quite a bit, you know,
Hmm.
especially during COVID time. We have a lot of time to think, right?
Yeah.
I did some exploration. I had like, you know, my brother and sister-in-law moved to Atlanta, and I had a few other people like move into this area.
Hmm.
And I was like, I don't know, you know. So I went down and checked out like Chattanooga and Asheville. That was a curiosity for me. And then, you know, Pacific Northwest, I still have not lived there, and that's always been a curiosity. But I think I look at too many metrics, and I'm like, you know, like Pacific Northwest, like I really need sunshine, and I see,
Mm,
you know, days with the most amount of sunshine, and it's like Milwaukee exceeds that
yeah.
as far as some of those. So I was like, okay, well, that's not right. But I don't know. I think the people I've, you know, encountered in Milwaukee, the friends that I've made, it's like what I remember is like outside of where I grew up, I never had friends or met people that I just jived so hard with
Mm.
as I had in Milwaukee. So, you know, that's a big piece to it. And a lot of like friends and brands and stuff like that. There's a lot of industry in Wisconsin as well. And I think that
Yeah.
has something just from a career standpoint going on.
Yeah.
So I don't know, man. You know, there's just not enough time on the timeline to have all the experiences.
That's how I feel too. Yeah. Sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You just want to like, oh, I want to do 2 years in this country or this country. But
Yeah.
I guess that's the beauty of Milwaukee too, you know, cost of living. Like you
Hmm.
can just continue to travel wherever you want to and
Yeah.
have a home base. So
Yeah. Well, that kind of leads me to my question of like, cause you've been to a lot of different countries to work. And I was looking through, yeah, your Instagram and stuff. And I was really curious to like hear what you thought was a country that like really changed your perspective on things or like really changed your mindset, because there's a lot of cool places out in the world, but there's definitely certain places that you're like, wow, this like really changed who I am as a person. Has there been places like that for you out there?
I think so for sure. You know, I've been to like rural parts of Africa,
Hmm.
in townships in South Africa, small like farming villages in Tanzania, rural parts in Mexico. And I think, yeah, it's a constant reminder to me when I think things are bad, they're not fucking bad.
Hmm.
You know, as terrible as things are, it's not terrible. You know, we don't have bombs going off outside our doors or genocide, you know, and all that kind of crazy stuff. We're not, it could be a lot worse. So I think that's the one thing that's like, yeah, that's just a constant reminder for me, I guess.
I mean, even the situation of like having clean water or something to drink, you know, like that's a resource that a lot of the world doesn't have, you know, in those
Oh,
places.
for sure. Yeah. And I filmed in locations where like literally your daily water ration, you're walking like a mile or more to even get it, right?
Hmm.
To bring home a pail of water that you're going to wash your dishes with, you're going to drink from, you're going to do all that. The
Yeah.
sanitation involved, like to use a restroom, you're going to a community bathroom in a township. And, you know, for whomever, you know, females at risk of being like, you know, harmed or captured or whatever, or even, you know, males just getting like beat up and robbed.
Yeah.
Like for example, like Stellenbosch is where we filmed, you know, a piece with a, you know, young girl named Olowetu. And in this township, it's like one of the larger townships
Hmm.
in South Africa. And on one side of the road is this massive township, shanty town, you know,
Hmm.
basically like toaster boxes of homes. You know, just get beat by the sun with 10 roofs, just baking in there.
Hmm.
And then on the other side of the street, it's like wine country where you just see like very wealthy tourists rolling up. It's pretty dark, actually. It's very eye-opening. And yeah, I don't know. It's very hard to like form a judgment or an understanding, you know, like you just take in the information. You're like, this doesn't feel good. It's much bigger than I can fix.
Hmm.
but it does give you an immense amount of perspective, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen the photos of things like that where what you're describing literally, it's like an overhead photo of like literally on one side, yeah, there's like shanty towns, and on the other side, it's like these mansions, you know, just on a line, basically,
Mhm.
just divided. Yeah, because were you biking at the time as well? Is that something that you always were doing?
Yeah, no, bikes have always been a part of my life. I've never been competitive, never like raced or any of that stuff.
Hmm.
But yeah, I can remember, you know, like the first bike I got was like this like Schwinn Z Factor, had this like curved top tube,
Yeah,
some like neon graphics. My dad had helped me pick that up from a bike shop in Louisiana. I was like, I still have the photo. I was tiny, man. I was like real small, elementary school. And I think that that just kind of changed me. It was just like ultimate freedom. You
yeah,
know, you jump on this little machine, you're going to go faster than your legs can take you, and you can just get so far away from home.
yeah. You can
So,
see so much stuff, you know?
and you
Yeah,
taking it in, you're not having like a revving motor behind you or anything. It's just like super visceral wind in the face.
yeah.
Yeah.
And do you shoot like your own bike stuff now? I mean, like, do you shoot anything around bikes? Like, have you done outside of Trek, like videos that you do?
For sure. Yeah. Actually, we'll be dropping a video with Brooklyn Bell. I don't know, within the next couple of weeks, actually. I think we don't have the actual due date when they're dropping it, but it's all
Mhm.
wrapped up and it's in their hands on their YouTube on private currently. But that's with Zip Wheels and Brooklyn Bell. She's like artist slash mountain biker. She's like repped by like Patagonia and Zip and
Mm,
some other people. But yeah, wrap that up and yeah, still shooting bikes. I guess to answer that in short, we shot with
yeah.
Bob Harper with Bosch. They do e-bike systems for a lot of different bike manufacturers.
Mm,
We had a three-part series we shot with him. A couple episodes in LA and one in New York. So that's
yeah.
already live.
So how did you go from? Because did you go from Trek to like starting your own company, or was there? Yeah, you went straight to that. So I guess we talked about it a little bit, but did you have clients before you decided to go, or did you just go and we're like, we're gonna figure this out?
Yeah. So there was a transition period in there. It's like post Trek, I kind of wanted to try two things. I knew that, you know, at Trek, I'd kind of met the cap of what we could do there.
Hmm.
Um, you know, understood like the directing production house world and how that works, agency representation, all that kind of stuff. But, you know, there's a million ways you can do it. And I
Hmm.
did have like a good like catalog of like connects and people that I knew and, you know, people that I wanted to continue working with. So that was always in mind. But with that too, I also wanted to figure out or taste a little bit of like the agency world and, you know, be like a rep director or whatever. So the first year outside of Trek, I had projects coming in through me, which I just kind of had it under like my LLC, but it was
Hmm.
still on my name. So it wasn't like an entity, a house name. But I was also represented by Allies and Co. out of Milwaukee with Tim and Shelly. Shout out. They and myself, we took on like various projects with like Johnsonville and Kohler and some other fun ones. And I guess within that year, I kind of just figured out like I kind of always wanted to have like a house name, and I didn't
Hmm.
know if I'd like fully embed within Allies or pull over and do my full thing myself. And I guess at that point, I just kind of like figured out like, you know, I had the shower thought where Trestle came to me, and I was like, I'm just going to give this thing wings.
Hmm.
Just kind of just went full route in that direction. I had a catalog, but I didn't really have a full plan. I just knew it'd work out.
Hmm.
Like I know I can make videos, and
Yeah,
I know I have the skill set behind me, and I just got to put up the framework, and things will be clean. And then that's what.
yeah.
Yeah.
Because I was curious. Like, was this something that you always thought you wanted to do, or was this something that like was just a more recent, I guess, discovery of like I want to start up something on my own. I don't want to be an employee somewhere. I want to like make something
Hmm.
my own.
Yeah, totally. I think going back, you know, even like the earlier years where I was doing like graphic design and screen
Mhm.
printing, you know, I'd always just thought like, wow, wouldn't it be cool to just have, you know, a little like micro agency? Not
Mhm.
even know what that fully entailed, but knew like, I just want a sandbox that I can play in with like my close homies and we all just do something collective and fun together and
Yeah.
craft things in whatever way it comes, you know? So that was kind of always a kind of a bug in the ear of thought. And as time goes, you know, the next thing leads to the next thing, the next thing, next thing, and then everything just felt right at that point.
with that idea of like constantly exploring and like learning, and do you think that applies as well to like your craft and what you do? Like the idea that you want to explore more things and see more countries and like see more, people and experiences in life. Do you think that also applies in your mind to your like craft and your art too?
For sure. I mean, I'll just say nothing about it is like manual. Everything is very auto in my head. Like I can't make my brain stop thinking of things. Everything snowballs into something else.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
And there's never enough time.
Yeah.
I think it's a very manual action for me to be like, okay, I've got to do this thing. Like for instance, like, I longboard too. And I'll have an idea in my head. It's like, oh, I want to play with this 360 camera. And I'm like, I'm thinking about it more in the production context.
Yeah.
Oh, for, potential job, let me do a test with it. I'm like, oh, I'm curious, what can I do with this? So I'll just like figure out some sort of rig and throw it on something. And like the example of like the longboard clip or whatever, it's like, I'm going to learn this tool. I've never done the 360 thing. I'm going to snap it on and like, I'm going to make a thing. And that's what I did. Yeah. I just wish there was more time, I guess, in general.
Yeah.
Because I have an immense amount of ideas and I'm a note taker. I like to check off all the stuff that I do. And I have a very long list that I can never conquer. It's probably one of the biggest downfalls of like running a business is like, you can be very spread, or you can be very spread thin due to being pulled in all different directions for all these needs. And you want to fulfill promises with people, and businesses, brand, etc. But oftentimes all of my internal creatives gets kind of put on the back burner until there's like a little bit of bandwidth, and that's sometimes hard to come by.
Yeah, because I was curious, like in doing that, was that something you thought about beforehand? Because I mean, it's one of those things where you can think about like, hey, if I start a business, I'm probably not going to be able to do as much creative stuff anymore because I have other things that I have to do, like actually make sure this business exists still, for the next year. But in practice, when you do get pulled away from like maybe not doing a project that you wanted to do and someone else doing it because you have to meet with your accountant or something, like something like that, is that a tough thing to do as a business owner?
I mean, for sure.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think anybody would say that too. I mean, just existing seems to be time consuming these days. Yeah, no, I never imagined I would be like so spread thin. I don't know. Yeah, no, it's crazy. It's really hard for me to imagine like how I could do all this with like children.
Yeah.
That's the real hard part. And that's, you go through COVID, you think about that too. You're like, oh man, my age and to standard. I mean, so I'm 34 now. I'm not married, single, no children, just like chasing experiences. When will that pivot, right? And what will it be like then? I don't know.
Well, I think I was talking about that with my partner. I was like, I can't imagine like if we had a kid right now, like the idea of like, because I feel for all those parents that like they have jobs and now all of a sudden their kids are at home. They were originally at school for 7 hours of the day, and now you have to like be there with them and make sure they're doing work and like while you're trying to do work. And oh my gosh, like because we were talking about like the first I don't know, like 4 years, 5 years of a kid's life before they go to school, like full time. They're just there all the time, and once they go to school, you're like, oh, okay, I got like a little bit of load off. I got like 7 hours or something a day where I can, do my own thing or work or whatever and not be interrupted. And then that's all taken away. That's just for a year and a half. Like how hard that must be. Yeah.
You need to fathom. I feel for it quite a bit.
It's a wild time. I just got my second shot like 2 weeks ago, so I'm good to go now. But yeah, I mean, that year and a half had to be sort of insanely rough. My parents had 4 kids. I'm one of 4. So like if this would have happened when we were all in school, like that would have been madness. We had a tiny house, so it would have been terrible.
Yeah, everybody on top of each other. Did the second shot hit you very hard?
The first one didn't hit me at all. The second one was like, I felt like sort of not great for like probably 12 hours. Then I was fine. So yeah, it wasn't too bad. my expectations were worse going in. So if it was good, then I would just be happy that it was good. You know, like,
Totally,
I,
totally.
yeah. So, but did you get your shots or anything like that?
I did, I did.
Yeah.
Yeah, the first one, no problem, just some arm pain or whatever, you
Yeah.
know. Second one, kind of same thing. I guess I was just like, all right, I'm gonna load up on water and just go ride my bike and try to like ride this thing off. I definitely
Yeah.
felt a little wigged out,
Mm-hmm.
not completely straight, but I think just being in motion helped me quite a bit.
Yeah, I think a lot of it was the panic of what it might be
Yeah,
because I got the shot like the first time it was fine, and then the second time they gave me the shot. They're like, go sit down for like 15 minutes or whatever to make sure you're not allergic to it. And I'm like, well, I wasn't the first time, but I'll do it anyways. And so I sat down, and I got like almost like pre dizzy, you know, like I'm like,
yeah,
but I think it was because I was so worried about getting
totally, totally. It's like
getting
psychosomatic, like placebo effect.
Yeah, exactly. So, but then after that, yeah, I was completely fine. I'm excited because we're going to Hawaii in a couple of months.
Mm.
So yeah, I'm excited to be able to start taking trips and do that. You
Yeah,
know.
no, it feels so good. Yeah, like Milwaukee's coming back to life too. You know, the warm days. It's just like, okay, I remember this is kind of like the old normal. You know.
Yeah, I look at the weather comparatively every single day, and yeah, now in Milwaukee, you guys are warmer than us. We have more mild winters, obviously, but
Mhm.
uh, yeah, you're getting warmer faster than we are out here, and I'm jealous. I'm still wearing sweaters and stuff because it's not that warm yet, but
You miss it at all?
I do. Yeah, I definitely do. I mean, it was my home for so long, you know, and it's
Mhm.
I know so many awesome people there, and meet awesome people like you all the time that are from there. So it's such a I don't know, it's such a different place than any place that I've been, at least in the U.S. Yeah, it seems to be a place of really just down to earth people who are just honestly the thing about Milwaukee, which I love so much, is that people are just up for anything. Like it always seems like people are just willing to do whatever. You know, it's like, oh well, do you want to do this thing with me? And you don't know me at all, and they're like, yeah, of course. Like come over to my
Trust you.
business. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you want anything for free? Like, do you want things like, and I'm
Yeah.
like, no, I just want to talk to you. But
Mhm.
yeah, it always seems like just people are so generous and kind, and not that there aren't people like that all over the place, but it's yeah, I love the city. I love the lake, you know, it being on the lake. There's a ton of, I could go on forever probably, but
Yeah,
yeah.
totally. That's
Yeah. Do you feel like with your like creative work and your artistic endeavors, like do you think you have a style? Like or do you think you can even have one like doing the work that you do because you're working for different clients and obviously trying to meet brand standards for them and do different things for them. So,
I think, you know, the stuff that goes up on like my Instagram or website, I think I
mhm,
embed with my style. If it's going to the client, it's going to have like a taste of my style or like trestle style,
yeah.
which is like a culmination of group of us. So yeah, we try to client work. It's going to have a taste of us. Obviously, people come to us for a reason or whatever, and we push that or pull that as much or little as they like.
Hmm.
So we're good there, you know. Creative for commerce, happy
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
On my style, I think, you know, I always embrace like texture and grit.
Mm,
I don't like for anything to feel too digital.
mm,
I think in a color sense, I don't like anything that's too saturated.
mm,
Like nothing in nature is fully saturated. Everything you see is all a product of, you know, the light that's put on it and
right.
how we see it. So as far as like processing imagery, I never like blacks that are too black. I never like whites that are too white. I
Mm,
never like colors that are too saturated. And then I like grit, and I like to embrace like mistakes.
mm,
I like to run the video camera like on a lot of things, just because you never know what you're going to get. You know, I think like in a weird way, if you put a paintbrush on paint and then you drag it across a canvas, I kind of think of the camera like a vacuum cleaner,
mm,
and it like sucks up what it sees. So
yeah.
when it's like grabbing up all those pixels of color and light, like that's usable stuff.
Mm,
And I love using those like blips and flips and oddities to like overlay, use some of my like compositing skills
hmm.
to like create more textural stuff. I like to create things that people go like, oh, how was that done?
Because do you think some of that aesthetic comes from like the outdoorsness in you, like the grit and the like, basically seeing outdoors and seeing places and knowing that they're not like this isn't like saturation of 60 when you're color correcting something, does that come from that experience as a kid? And you think? Yeah.
I've never thought about it that way, but I'm sure. I mean, there's something beautiful about like just dirt on the hands,
Yeah. Yeah.
Dirt in the cracks of old tile and stuff like that.
Because I do photography in film as well. Like when I shoot, and it's like crazy out here. Like it basically, you go sort of what you're talking about. You can point a camera basically anywhere, and it's like beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like what I try to do, and sort of is what you're talking about as well, is like I just wanted to emulate what I'm seeing right now, because I feel like when you're somewhere specific and you're like, oh my God, this is so beautiful, and then you take a picture, it's like, well, that's not as beautiful as what I'm seeing with my eyes, but I want to make it like that. So it's like realistic for people when they look at it, they're like, oh my God, that's pretty. And then they go there and they're like, oh, well, this is what this is, So
no, absolutely. I agree with that 100%, man.
Yeah.
And I will say your photography is beautiful.
Oh, thank you.
You should rep that. That's you keep that on. Is that 414 Films? Is where you have your photography? Yeah. I love all the stuff that you've been shooting out in the Pacific Northwest there. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, man.
Gorgeous. Yeah.
Yeah. Cause I think I had a very different, education path than you, where you went to a very intensive, like for your job, I guess, sensibility, school, where I felt like I went to school and then I was like, I have to learn all this by myself once I graduated, even though I went to school for what I do. It's like all the stuff we were using was pretty irrelevant when I graduated. And so I'd like teach myself all over again when I graduated school. And so there was a much larger contrast between like what I was making at 21 to what I'm making now at 30. Yeah. Because I just have learned so much because I had to.
Yeah. And was that a 4-year school?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was a 4-year school, and it was also like super expensive. Like it was one of those things, and talking about education, you mentioned it a little bit, but I have probably a similar view to you about education, where it was like, it was insane that I paid that much for school, like to get educated. And also I had to like teach myself all over again. So it's like,
it's crazy. Yeah.
Yeah. And like, I just paid off my student loans, like literally, I don't know, like a couple months ago, like I was
That's
finished.
Awesome. Congratulations.
Well, thank you. Yeah. But it was, I was talking to my partner. I'm like, if we have kids, like we're giving them all the options. If they want to go be a carpenter, hell yeah, do that, man. Go be a carpenter, because like it is nonsense to pay that much money for school.
Right. Yeah. It's like some jobs, they want
like a doctor. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Like our lawyers.
Yeah.
I get that to an extent. But YouTube University, right? Like,
yeah. That's where I learned a lot of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And you learn from other people's mistakes, and you're not. I remember, I did do like a community college from like my base credits and stuff. And it was very frustrating because I did it actually. I started in sound engineering there, and I was like, okay, well, I know more than the teacher. That's not right.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, switch this up. And then I was in the graphic design side, just trying to fill in the holes because I was doing graphic design at the time. Mm-hmm. And again, the teacher's like reading the textbook as she's teaching it. And I'm like, well, that's not right.
I could just go do this by myself.
Exactly. Things have to make sense to me. I need to know why, very much in how I learn. And that stuff didn't make sense.
Yeah. And there's definitely really great professors at colleges where you're like, wow, I'm learning so much more than just what is in the books or whatever, because this person knows so much about what they're talking about, which is
and they're passionate too, right? They're prepared and all that kind of good stuff.
Yeah.
It goes a long way.
Yeah. And then you get also professors that like are like that, where they're just reading out of a book and they're sort of like, I'm like, do you even care? Like, do you even care about this topic? I guess it really, yeah. Once again, it really depends on what you want to do. But yeah, just to, I guess just to wrap it up here, like if people want to contact you, work with you, find your work, where can they go?
Yeah, I mean, Instagram's always a great spot, and then through there you can kind of link to everything. But I mean, my website's stevenspurlock.com, and trestle.works. So www.trestle.works.
And there's a T in your domain name. I just wanted to point that out. It's Stephen T. Spurlock.
It is Stephen T, but you can also access it through Steven Spurlock.
Oh, you got both.
Yeah, yeah. Well, actually, funny story with that. There's this very old man, not related to him, who was holding on to this thing. He's like a State Farm insurance rep.
Yeah.
And I would like check every 6 months just to see, I say this respectfully, if he had croaked yet. And
sure, yeah.
And I don't know, but the domain's now available. I think maybe he's retired. So
okay. Yeah. There's also Steven Spurlock, who's a basketball player, is what I found looking you up.
Yeah, yeah. I found that too in my later years.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know if he went to the NBA, but he definitely played in college. So
yeah,
cool, man. Thank you so much for coming on. It was so awesome to meet you and chat with you. And yeah, I really love your work. I think you're an amazing creative person. So thank you so much for taking the time.
Well, Sam, thank you. I feel really honored to be here. I really love what you're doing, and your voice is very therapeutic. So if you ever want to chat on the offline, let's do that too.
Yeah, for sure, man. Definitely. I would love to do that. So have a great day, man. Thank you so much.
You too. All right, take care.